Okay, in this case, the student wants to provide an explanation and an example of Oliveros' sonic meditations. Whatever that exactly is, he wants to show an example and an explanation of those meditations. All right, let's see if we can figure this out. Look through the particular bullet points. In 1971, experimental musician Pauline Oliveros created sonic meditations. Okay, now it's getting background on what this is, because I don't know what it is. Sonic meditations is not music, but rather a series of sound-based exercises called meditations. Okay, so it's sound-based meditation. Each meditation consists of instructions for participants to make, imagine, listen to, or remember sounds. So this is describing what sonic meditations is. The instructions for meditation 5 state, walk so silently that the bottoms of your feet become ears. Those for meditation state 18 state, listen to a sound until you no longer recognize it. So these are specific, I guess, examples, if we want to categorize what these are. They're examples of sonic meditations. And all right, so let's look at the answer choices. Sonic meditations is not music, but rather a series of sound-based meditations that consist of instructions. That's an explanation of what it is, okay? Meditation 18, for instance, here is an example of one of them, right? Instructs participants to listen to the sound. This looks pretty good. I'm going to circle it for now because I think that meets both of our conditions. Let's check B, C, and D though. In 1971, Oliveros created sonic meditations. Again, not really important that it's 1971 when it started, which is the information up here, because that's neither explanation nor example. A series of meditations that consist of instructions for participants to make, imagine, listen to. Yeah, it's kind of an explanation, but not a very good explanation. That's not right. C, walk so silently at the bottoms of your feet become ears is one example of the instructions found in sonic meditations. Okay, this is an example. It is not an explanation. So this one's not meeting our explanation criteria, which is right here. We need to meet both criteria. That's wrong. While both meditations consist of instructions, meditation 18 instructs participants to listen, whereas 5 instructs people to walk. Okay, we don't want a comparison. The question prompt above does not say compare specific meditations. It says explain them, as A does, and then show examples, as A does. A is the correct answer. In this prompt, the student wants to explain. So this is going to be one of our explain prompts. Explain how, particularly the House of Wisdom preserved the world's knowledge, okay? So we don't so much want to know what the House of Wisdom does as much as how it preserved the world's knowledge. Like, what's the method by? Let's look at the bullet points first. One of history's greatest libraries was the House of Wisdom, okay? Good background information. It was founded in the 8th century with the goal of preserving all the world's knowledge. So that's the purpose, was to preserve the world's knowledge. We want to know how it did it. Scholars of the House of Wisdom collected ancient and contemporary texts from Greece, India, elsewhere, and translated them into Arabic. Okay, so that sounds like kind of a step one. Writings included those of Greek philosopher Aristotle and Indian mathematician. So it's, who it included. And bullet point 3, the House of Wisdom used Chinese paper-making technology to create paper versions to be studied and shared. So, okay, it brought texts in from all over the world, including great philosophers, and then they used paper-making technology to create paper versions. So that's how they preserved, by creating paper versions, the world's knowledge. Let's check the answer. We're going to see those conditions in our correct answer. The House of Wisdom was known for bringing together knowledge from around the world. True. That's this part up here, right? Including Greece, India, and China. But this says nothing about how it preserved. So that's not answering the full conditions of the question. Founded in Iraq in the 18th century. That's not really important for our question prompt. The House of Wisdom employed many scholars. Again, not important. That is not answering the question prompt. Writings from the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Indian mathematician Aryabhata were preserved at the House of Wisdom. Okay, that's great that they were preserved there. They're using the same word. That does not mean it's the same answer or the right idea for our condition. We want to know how they preserved, and not just these guys, but the whole world's knowledge as well. This is not the right answer. The House of Wisdom collected writings from different countries and created paper versions. This is how they preserved it. They created those paper versions right there in Arabic to be studied and shared. D is the correct answer. Okay, this is a problem that wants to emphasize a difference. So this is a comparison, difference, similarity prompt between two books, the two books. We don't know what two books, but I'm sure it's going to outline us in the bullet points. So I want to know not the similarity, but particularly the differences between the two books in this case. So let's look at the bullet points to see if we can figure that out. Some powerful works of literature have so influenced readers that new legislation has been passed as a result. The interesting narrative of life is the autobiography of a man who endured slavery on both sides of the Atlantic. Okay, that's one book right there. It's an example. Equano's book contributed to the passage of the slave trade. So this is the purpose or what it did. The Jungle, 1906, is a fictional work by Upton Scholar that describes unsanitary conditions in the U.S. meatpacking plants. This is example 2, the other book. Okay. Sinclair's book contributed to the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. So this is what it did. Okay. The similarity is in what they did. They both passed legislation. That's the similarity. Notice we do not want to find the similarity. We want to know the differences of the books. Well, where are the differences? The titles are different. The dates are different. The authors are different. And one's an autobiography and one is a fictional work. So date, titles, authors, fiction versus nonfiction. These are the differences. Let's see if we find any of that in the answer choices. Although both are powerful works of literature that contributed to new legislation, this is true, and I like the contrasting transition setting this up. Equano's book is an autobiography. It is. And Sinclair's book is fictional. It is. That's going to be our answer. Let's just check B, C, and D. They may have written about different topics, but Equano and Sinclair both influenced readers. Well, it really doesn't say anything about influencing readers, although we might be able to assume that. This is not the key difference, that they wrote about different topics. So, and it's not about they influence readers. So that's just not right. Okay. The 1807 Slave Trade Act resulted in part from a book by Equano. Well, the 1906, okay, so there were different laws that were passed. That's a good point. I didn't pick up on that before. They both passed laws, but they passed different laws. Is that the core idea of the differences here, that there were different laws? No, I'd still classify that as a similarity in general. I would not highlight that as the key difference that we want to emphasize between the two books. D, the interesting narrative of the life of Olado, Equano, and the Jungle are two works of literature that contributed to new legislation concerning the slave trade and food safety, respectively. Okay, this is how they're similar. So that's the reverse of being, different, which is our goal here. So I like A. It sets up my contrasting transition and it highlights two key differences in the books. B, C do indicate differences. I just don't see that those differences are the core ideas or differences that we want to emphasize in this case. The fact that there are two different laws passed is not really the emphasis here. And the fact that they had different topics themselves is not really the emphasis here. Okay, this is an explain prompt. The student wants to explain a disadvantage of relying on audio features to predict a song's popularity. So the disadvantages on relying on audio features. Let's see the bullet points. The million song dataset included main audio features and descriptive tags for popular songs. Okay, so it has the audio features. Okay. Audio features include acoustic traits such as loudness and pitch intervals. Many algorithms use these audio features to predict popularity. So does audio features equal song popularity? Our explanation should point out there's a disadvantage of saying audio features equals popularity. Let's figure that out. Hopefully the next two bullet points will tell us. These algorithms may fail to accurately identify main audio features of a song with varying acoustic traits. Okay, there's a problem right there. It just fails to accurately identify main audio features. Okay, algorithms based on descriptive tags that describe fixed traits such as genre or are more reliable. So the descriptive tags, that part, is more reliable for predicting popularity than are the audio features. So that's a big problem there too. Okay, so there's a shortcoming of the audio features approach. It fails to identify the main features with varying acoustic songs, and the other approach, tags, are better. So let's see if there's an answer that picks up those ideas. Many popularity predicting algorithms are based on a song's audio features, such as no, that's just telling us the background information given in the bullet points. It's not a disadvantage in there. B, algorithms based on audio features may misidentify the main features of a song. Okay, that is true, right? And it's relevant to our answer, potentially, with varying acoustic traits. That's exactly what this part says, making such algorithms less reliable predictors of popularity than those based on fixed traits, which is a descriptive tag. I assume that's an example of a fixed trait. That looks to be the answer. That's the problem, and it's therefore worse than the alternative approach. Okay, C, audio features describe acoustic traits such as pitch intervals, which may vary within a song, whereas descriptive tag features, this is just telling what each of them are. And then lastly, this dependent clause is where the descriptive tags are reliable predictors. Well, I'm not sure it says it's reliable per se, because it's a comparative in the text. It's more reliable. Didn't say it's absolutely reliable. So this is too definitive, which makes it, therefore kind of extreme and not accurate to the text. Plus, this is just a detail of the two without a focus on the problems or disadvantages of the acoustic traits or audio features. Yeah, that's not going to be our answer. The MSD's descriptive tags are reliable predictors of songs' popularity. Again, it's more reliable. We don't know if it's reliable. That's extreme. As the traits they describe are fixed. No, that's not going to be our answer. B is the correct answer. Okay, this prompt wants to introduce a book to an audience already familiar with the magazine Atlantic Monthly. Okay, so if they're already familiar with it, we probably don't want to provide the background information on Atlantic Monthly in our answer, but we do have to introduce this particular author's book. So let's go ahead and read the bullet points so we can figure out the details here. The Atlantic Monthly magazine was first published in 1857. The magazine focused on politics, art, and literature. This is our background. Okay, this is what we do not want. So it should not be in the answer for a familiar condition, okay? In 2019, Catherine Halverson published the book Faraway Women and the Atlantic Monthly. So this is one book, by the way. That's not the magazine, or it's just peripherally related. That's part of the title of her book. Its subject is female authors whose autobiographies appeared in the magazine in the early 1900s. One of the authors discussed is Juanita Harrison, okay? So we want to introduce this book by Catherine Halverson. So we've got to introduce this book. And we don't want to include the background information on the Atlantic Monthly because people already know that. Let's look at the answer choices. Catherine Halverson, Faraway Women, the Atlantic Monthly, discusses female authors whose autobiographies appeared in the magazine in the early 1900s. Okay, this says in the magazine, so it's not telling us what the magazine is. It's just a general broad statement. So familiar readers would already know that that magazine refers back to the Atlantic Monthly in the title. This looks good. It's an introduction, and it doesn't explain or include the full first two bullet point information telling us what the Atlantic Monthly is. I think this is going to be our correct answer. Let's check B, C, and D. A magazine called the Atlantic Monthly, referred to in Catherine Henderson's book title, was first. No, this is one of those first bullet points. This is what you would tell somebody who's unfamiliar with the Atlantic Monthly. C, Faraway Women in the Atlantic Monthly features contributors to the Atlantic Monthly, first published in. So here we're getting background information on what the Atlantic Monthly is on this last dependent clause. That is not what we want if you're already familiar with the magazine. D, an author discussed by Catherine Halverson is Juanita Harrison, whose autobiography appeared in the Atlantic Monthly in the early 1900s. Okay, this is not introducing the book. This is not meeting that first goal there. So that's therefore incorrect. Correct answer is A.